It's much better than in my apartment doing this.
So that space that's across the courtyard is not a photography place anymore, huh?
Okay, one sec. And this is October 28, 2015, the Père Jacques work seen against a white wall with better lighting than in my studio area. And there you have it. Please come up over here and get as close as you can. Move in closer, so everyone can see as best as you're able to. And there are about somewhere between 60 and 63 works done now in the Under the Wings series. Got a huge, everybody, come closer please. Move in so people further back and see. What do I have, like 5-6 minutes? People can sit on the floor in front if you want, make it easier for people in the back. In 1999, I did the first mosaic-drawing combo, as I call it, called Young Man with a Star of David Armband in the Warsaw Ghetto. Can you all hear me? Yeah. And not using, oh, there we go. That work and another work were exhibited at the Fry in 2001, not far from here. And I set a goal. The staff at the Fry liked that first mosaic drawing combo so much, I decided I was going to set a goal of doing 9 more, 10 mosaic drawing combos. And I've completed 7 now. This was the 6th on the right here I did in 2014. The one on the left I began in very late, end of December 2014 and completed it in September, just a few months ago. So those are and the first 6 of the mosaic drawing combos depict 7 European Jewish victims of the Nazis and fascists, all Polish Jewish, except for one Croatian Jewish woman. And then the 7th, I'll explain what this is in a second. The 7th one, the one on the left, was by the first Christian victim of the Nazis, Père Jacques, a Roman Catholic priest from France, who was made famous for moviegoers back in 1987 in a movie called Au revoir les enfants, Goodbye Children. Seattle Public Library has it in DVD, you can get it, or Netflix, or wherever you get it. It's a wonderful movie. There's actually no horror in the movie at all. It's very benign. It's about his role in trying to save the lives of 3 French Jewish children. The film director was a pupil in the school during the war, and one of his best friend was one of the 3 Jewish boys. The 3 Jewish boys were arrested, as was Père Jacques, by the Nazi Gestapo and so on. The boys were murdered at Auschwitz. Père Jacques was alive at liberation. He was born in 1900. So he was either 44 or 45 at liberation at the Mauthausen concentration death camp in Austria. Weighing 88 pounds, he succumbed, as happened to many of the concentration death camp survivors in camps across Europe. I have 3 more mosaic drawing combos I'm planning to do the next several years. I'm approaching 66 soon, so I gotta keep going here. And for those remaining 3, I'm also going to depict non-Jewish victims of the Nazis to symbolically represent the 10 million victims who were murdered by the Nazis and fascists. They include, and I always like to mention this in particular, I always get these 2 figures mixed up. One of them was 250,000. The numbers are beyond our comprehension. The other one was 500,000. Romani and Sinti people were targeted for death across Europe, gypsies in common usage, just like Jewish people were. And before they began the final solution to the Jewish problem, as it was called, they systematically murdered, I guess that was 250,000, physically and mentally disabled Protestant and Catholic Austrians and Germans. And had more people spoken up about that, it's entirely possible the final solution that followed would not have happened. The Holocaust did not have to happen. This is my great-grandmother. Her name was Zlata Barshewsky, and my grandfather, who I knew, was one of her sons. He was born around 1881 or 82, so I figured she was probably born around 1860. She could have actually been alive at the time I was born, or as a child, hadn't it been for the Nazi genocide. She lived in a Jewish old folks' home in a large city in northeast Poland called Bialystok. My grandfather corresponded with her from the time he left Poland around 1903 till sometime after the Nazi invasion. I'd like to go back in time and talk to my grandfather and ask him what was that like for him. All of a sudden, all this correspondence ended and you found out what was going on in the camps and all that, because he's gone. But a particular note about these 2 people from completely different worlds. She was very observant. She had other children, sons who stayed in Europe. One lived had moved to Berlin from Poland. Another one was in Lithuania. And she wouldn't eat in the homes of her children because they were non-observant. She was very devout. Père Jacques, a Roman Catholic priest, about as different as you can get historically in terms of European history, Christian in relation to Christianity and Jewish history over at least the last 1,000 years of Christian Europe. Both caught up in this mass genocide and theft all across Europe. So they make an ironic pairing in terms of their backgrounds and their demise. We might have, a minute for questions here, or the Q&A is going to be after? Sorry, I forget how this is going to be done. Anyone have a quick question? We have a terrific keynote speaker coming up. Question? Anybody? Could be about anything. Art, history, aesthetics, religion, whatever. Now, this is even shyer than the audiences in Scotland. Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about the objects on the frame?
Objects on the frame.
On the edges.
On the edges. This was given to me actually by a Catholic friend who was in an art studio with me for years, Pioneer Sculpture of the Quake. I don't know where she got it. And I've used the same molding. It's probably about 100 years old in several of the mosaic drawing combos. These gray sections were from pieces of a rowboat I scrounged that was like a scrap outdoors one year. I pick up things, I've guest taught a lot, 7 times in Israel, numerous teaching trips to England, Scotland, Wales. I like to walk beaches and so on. This is brick debris outside someone's home in Jerusalem I picked up. This old
what you call it, it's like a light bulb fixture from the old Music Hall Theater, which was a Paramount movie palace in Seattle, torn down in 1991. This is from my family's kitchen when I was growing up in the 1950s. I thought, well, I'll make a relation between my mother and her grandmother and embed that there. Less than the amount of junk that my nephews will eventually inherit. I've got 3 kind of silver plate cups I bought at a shop in a city called Jaffa, a mixed Arab-Jewish city near Tel Aviv in Israel. The railroad spikes, I'm going to wait on that, but I'll just mention I picked those up on the Seattle waterfront. I worked at the Magnolia Library for years, and I used to commute from the Pike Market where I lived. And all these railroad spikes have made their way into several of my Holocaust-themed artworks. This is supposed to be a broken cross here, symbolic. There's this giant, like, tool thing down here. Everyone can, afterwards, if you can take a quick look. I picked that up on a beach in northeast Scotland last March when I was teaching in Scottish schools. There were all these ruins of, decaying ruins of anti-Nazi, anti-tank fortifications built by the British Army in 1941 and 42. Anyway, so I've got a little British Army World War II history in relation to Nazism there, along with a whole bunch of like brick and stones and stuff. This rock here is either from the beach in Haifa in Israel or from a walk on the Tiber River in Rome. I went to Rome for a week in 2010, I forget which. But that's just an example of how some things like this I may just pick up at Goodwill. So a friend of mine has called it my effective use of detritus, odds and ends showing up. This is from like an old sewing machine cabinet, for example, that a friend was moving to a recycling place. Mickey Mouse was given to me by a girlfriend 30 years ago. I don't know whether my great-grandma Zlata ever saw a movie. It's entirely possible that she had. They might have brought in a movie projector into the old folks home in that city in Bialystok. I don't know where she died either. She could have died in the ghetto. Most of Bialystok's Jews were deported to a death camp called Treblinka. So, thanks. Any other questions quickly before probably taking more than enough time here? One more question. Yes.
What inspired your first mosaic?
Well, the first mosaic was actually part of the series, most of which is drawings. And the first drawing I did is a drawing of a trolley car that was in the Warsaw Ghetto, which is a concentration camp itself, that I did in 1991. That was inspired, kind of an outgrowth of Dean Marcoli mentioned that I spent 10 weeks in Poland in the mid-'80s, and I began doing artistic responses to my time in Poland, both in Poland and as soon as I came back. I consider Poland like the world's largest Jewish graveyard, all unconsecrated because most of the people went up and spoke in ash. So kind of the mosaic drawing combos were kind of just an outgrowth of all the drawings done over the years. Were kind of just a progression artistically.
Thank you.
Thanks. Why don't we all sit down and we can hear Mr. Hershkowitz speak. Thank you.
Business.
You have any questions?
You're both undergrads?
Yes.
All right. And I was going to ask you what you think of this section here.
It looks like a face.
Yeah, it looks like a smile.
A smiling face.
It looks like something with bangs. With teeth.
Yeah.
What is it?
From a distance, it looks like it's smiling, but when you come closer,
See, this is supposed to be smiling. Do you remember a children's book from when you were a child, Where the Wild Things Are?
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I like my work, my tolerance education is what I call my Holocaust and my human rights series artworks. And in particular, I wanted to make this accessible to children, so that's why I had like this funky, smiling fish, whatever it might have been. There actually are a couple of fish in here. The light's odd here. There's one here and there's another one here. That one in particular, actually when I was working on it, I was posting photos on Facebook. A friend of mine was that saw the photo and he said, that reminds me of, I can't think of the name, some cartoon character. Anyway, it's supposed to be kind of whimsical.
It kind of looks like a cow. It's really round. You see that? A little bit, yeah. Definitely some kind of cartoon.
Cartoon. So, since he's videoing this, either you have any questions about anything I've done here, now's the time with the living artist.
How long does it take to do anything like that? Because you said you have to
On average, they used to take me a year to do these, but I was working. I worked as a part-time library clerk for Seattle Public Library. Artists have to work at something or other, until they're either older or done. And I would spend about a year, but since I retired from the job 5 years ago, each of the mosaics I've done since then has taken about 5 or 6 months. Like that one I began in April 1st, 2014, did the drawing and then got the wood, cut the exterior shape, made all the outside frame and the mosaic. I finished it sometime in September of that year. This one, I started the drawing on December 28th. 2014, finished the drawing in early February, so that was like maybe 5 weeks or so on the drawing. And I was teaching in Britain last year for 6 weeks. And I came back, I started the mosaic, got the wood and all that in late April, so May, June, July, August, and I finished it in mid-September, so it's equivalent to about 5 months, 5.5 months. Pretty, not necessarily 8 hours a day, but sometimes I could only do like 2 hours a work. It was incredibly labor intensive. I think someone asked, but I didn't answer. All the tiles I buy like plates, so it's like a good way. I hammer them, with a hammer, rather than a towel. And then using tile cutters that was hard work.
I was terrified because I pressed it
Cutting
and
the
something
pieces the right sizes, it's just a lot of work. Especially when there's like imagery. Can you tell what that is?
yeah, it's a duck.
Duck, yeah.
Akiva, we have a photo opportunity.
Okay.
You ready? We're going to all just stand together for a moment. Zlata, be in the middle. We'll honor you.
Can we get these lights on here?
Yeah, you're busy.
Get yourself.
Get yourself together, put the apple together.
Nina, are you not coming in?
No, I'm not.
I need one more person. Oh, it's kind of dark.
Come on.
Peter, you can do a 10-second video and then a still also. Dean Marcooley, can we get your presence over here, please? Thanks.
I want to do it with the other light too, just to get.
I know.
Perfect, yeah. Good.
He was recruited overseas by Boeing and came to Seattle in 1967. Since he's been in the Seattle area, he's received an MS in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Washington, and an MA in Naval History and International Relations from the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. Bob has written numerous magazine articles and papers on naval armament, military history, and naval operations. He served in the US Naval Reserve for 24 years, retiring as a commander. Some of his family members were not as fortunate as his family. He had an uncle, I think, that ended up in Auschwitz. But Bob